This week on Return to Wisdom, speaker and author Lauren Renee joins us to unpack the full spectrum woman.
The easiest way to propagandize someone is to get them emotional, is to tug on their emotions and to make them feel some kind of trauma bond to your cause.
Motherhood as initiation, informed consent in birth, the difference between feminine and feminist.
Then we can have true discourse, we can have true consent, we can have true discussions, we can have real life data then we can work off because people are not being brainwashed and propagandized and lied to.
And how to build real agency in an age of propaganda.
Man, you really like the controversial topics, don't you? This is where you might lose some audience here.
Welcome, Lauren Renee. True story. I used to get panic attacks, and when I went and investigated this, it turns out I had low iron, something 1 in 3 of us have. Now, regular iron supplements, gross. They're full of synthetics. Your body doesn't even absorb it, and be honest, inflammation. So when I found this supplement, I just had to share it with you guys. It is Great Spirit. They are organic, synthetic free. It is all whole food based, and they're produced here in Australia. I cannot believe the difference I've seen in my energy levels and no panic attacks. So if you want to check them out, you can head to greatspirit.com.au, use the code KASHIA20 for 20% off your first order, and enjoy feeling good again. Wow, Kashia, how great is the quality of your new podcast, Return to Wisdom? Oh, mate, I know. I have been recording at Byron Bay's premium content and podcast recording studio, Pod Byron. They are epic. It's new, it's fresh, it's legit, as you can see. If you want to upskill your brand, if you want to create a course online, this is the place to do it. Jump on at podbyron.com and be sure to check the show notes for a sneaky little discount on your first session. Pod Byron, that's where it's at. You! Welcome everyone to Return to Wisdom. This is the third time of me doing this because Lauren just keeps interrupting me. But today's guest is Lauren Renee. She is a speaker, author, and event producer based in country New South Wales. Lauren is focused on authentic conversations around womanhood, community, and informed consent, and has led many events both in person and online, fostering connection and agency among women. Hosting the podcast, A Woman Refined, and that is also where you'll find her on social media. Here is Lauren. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry for my interruptions. I get excited.
That's totally fine. We were talking offline for a little bit just now, but when you say that you can't really nail down the topic that you cover, do you reckon women's agency? I feel like I nailed it. Did I nail it?
Yeah. Look, I think women are really important to me, and it's important for me to discuss the full breadth of a woman. I kind of call it the full spectrum woman, because I think for me, focusing on one area, they all interlock. And so to just focus on one area, I feel like isn't as fleshed out as I really feel like a true woman should be. I think it's good to focus on one area when you're like, oh, I've got a problem here, or I've got a potential point of growth expansion. But for me, I like all of the things, all of the parts of the woman. I like the ugly bits and the dirty bits and the shadowy bits, and I like the light bits and the joyful bits and the playful bits. I love all of that, and the deep wisdom and the intuition that women have, and that full expressed femininity. I love it all. So why limit myself, really? Just go through it all. I feel like I've been through a lot too, so I have a good spectrum to call from in order to speak to.
100%. And we were talking about that a little bit offline. But your experience has been vast, and I love that where you've come. I mean, at the moment, the subject matter that you're discussing is so much on the feminine and feminism and healthy masculine, and these subjects that I actually find, and let me know if you can relate to this, because I definitely started out on my like info nerding mainly in health and then birth for obvious reasons. But
Same.
yeah, but like I reckon the initiation into motherhood or into pregnancy really does like fuel a desire to know more and learn more and be better and do better and all of these things. And that inkling for me was definitely around health, and like vaccines was probably one of the first part, but food and diet and exercise and all of that, water, air, like environment, everything. And then not for some reason, I feel like it's been a fairly natural progression, but then it goes into like the health of your relationships and like the health of like personality and emotional health, and then from relationships it somehow ends at feminism.
All roads lead to feminism.
Yeah, like, and then you like, I don't know, read Louise Perry's book and Mary Harrington, and you're like, fuck. What have we done?
Yeah. I was on my Facebook the other day, and I don't use my Facebook at all. I just have it there for like family members, older family members, shall we say. But I was on there the other day and I saw that I'd reposted a Clementine Ford post many, many years ago. And I just did like a whole series on like how toxic this woman is. I was like, oh, what growth I've had. What good growth,
Look where I have come from.
Exactly.
Really did 180 there.
Exactly. But I was the same, I studied. Look, first of all, I was working for like a major movie studio. I was a total mainstream normie type person. I was in PR, publicity and promotions. I worked with celebrities and magazines and had this like quote unquote glamorous lifestyle. And then I watched a documentary called Food Matters, and it totally changed my entire life. And I was 24 at the time, 24, 25. And like I just started taking vitamin C, like the Synovus chewables, instead of eating Skittles. That was my swap that I did. And I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing. This is like a whole new life. And so that was a big step for me and a big wake-up call. And I ended up studying holistic nutrition. And from that, so similar to you, like studied the health and wellness, but the course that I did actually focused more on the reasons why you eat versus what you eat. So when I had clients, I would put them on a restrictive diet, basically an anti-candida diet, because most people had candida. But I didn't really care about the diet. The diet was just like a segue into looking at their behavioral stuff that was behind all the things that come up when you're not placating your emotions with food, basically. So we talked about a range of subjects every time that I had clients, and that was something that I really loved. And I always ended up like coming back to, especially with the older women that I had, like always coming back to relationships and sex and all of that kind of stuff that was coming up for them when they weren't eating in the way that they were like placating feelings and shoving them down with food. So that always opened things up for me. And I really wanted to go more into women's health and hormones. So I started doing that. And then I really moved into wanting to study sexology, and never ended up getting there, but I started on my own research, my own journey of doing that. And I started putting together a program called Welcome to Womanhood, which was supposed to be like an extension of sex education for young women. And we were going to pitch it into schools. And we started to do that when I got pregnant. And then that was a massive shift for me. And like you said, the massive initiation into motherhood from maiden, and you suddenly realize, oh, I know nothing. like this is everything I thought I knew, and that goes out the window, and I have to start again. So yeah, that was a big step for me, and a big wake up call, and something that I lent into. I really lent into that, and I wrote that book, Birthing Outside the System, where I wanted to give women like an informed choice on everything. I was already on the vaccine side pre-2020. So I was already understood like informed consent and all of that. but I really wanted women to understand, because a lot of women didn't understand, especially in Australia, what your options were, what you could do, what was allowed. Because even when I got pregnant, and I felt like I was so informed, like I was a super informed person doing all this work, had done all this research. I got pregnant and I was like, so now what? Like, what do I do? And no one had any answers for me. So I felt like, okay, I'm going to be that person that people could call, or people could, email, and I would have the answers for them. So that all started. And then, as you come out of postpartum and you start looking at how did I get into these situations in my life, and you start looking deeper, because it just becomes a habit. It's just part of my personality. Yeah, I started undoing all of this programming that I'd had in my brain. And one of my friends in particular, Amy, shout out to Amy, she's been on my podcast. We always spoke about this, where she said this key phrase that changed everything for me. And it was feminine, not feminist. And I was like, what's the difference? What do you mean? Isn't that the same thing? And she was like, no, it's totally different. And it sent me down a rabbit hole. I was like, okay, new thing to research. I'm going to look that up. And once I started researching feminism, I was like, oh, not that kind of, I don't subscribe to that. I don't want that kind of feminism. Like, that's not for me at all. There's all these hidden agendas behind it. Oh, you just want some women in the workforce. Like, there's some even really nasty, somewhat eugenics forms behind the origins of feminism. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I don't really subscribe to all of that. So why am I calling myself this thing that actually I hadn't even researched, and I just had like a broad view of? And so I went online and was like, what's the opposite? And found the trad wife movement and went, that doesn't work for me either. So yeah, I ended up where I am now, deciding to create my own little niche and speak to that.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Like a moderate on the trad to feminist timeline.
Yeah. Well, look, they both have good parts about them, and that's something that I really am passionate about speaking to, is that I don't want to demonize something wholly and completely. Like, for me, I understand how people got to be there, because I was there. And I also understand how easy it is to swing hard one way and hard the other. And the backlash, I totally get that. That's really like ingrained in my personality, and I work really hard not to do that. So I have a lot of compassion and understanding, and I take the good things from everything, but I just don't think that it really either side lends itself to the bio-individual woman. So the way that I express my femininity is not going to be the same way that you do, or that anyone listening does. It's totally individual, but it is still all feminine. And I think that's what I really want to that's the message that I really want to give to all women, is like, you're a full spectrum woman. All things about you are woman and feminine. For me, there's no masculine in you. Even if you feel like you're in your masculine or whatever, I feel like that's just a hardened version of the feminine. And I feel like once we accept that that is a feminine part of us, it's maybe just not the part that we really need to sit in all the time. Or it's a good part of us that we can bring out at good moments in good versions, not a toxic, wounded, shadowy version, but in a good version, then that could really benefit us. And I don't need to other that, and I don't need to shame that and try not to be that. I can just accept myself wholly. Then I have a lot more peace with myself, and I have a lot more grace with myself. And I am who I am, and I'm just going to work on being like the best version of me. And I think that's what I really want for all women. It's not to get caught up in all of these labels and ideas about things, but like go inward and downward. That for me is like the journey, the feminine journey to like meet self. Yeah.
No, and I love that you share. I think like the journey to get to that place on your podcast, where you are discussing not just the moderate, but both sides of it, and like going there and feeling it out too. So I guess other people can actually make their own decisions about it as well. It's not so much this is what I think, and therefore you should think it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do really enjoy that, because as an info nerd, I find my process is absolutely swinging from one extreme to the next. only for short periods, and then, someone will check me, and I love being checked. Like I actually like it when people challenge me, because I'm like, please, like, how valid is what I'm saying? I don't even know. I need someone to check me. Like, can I reasonably argue this with you, or have you got me against a wall and now I need to reconsider whatever I'm spinning?
Yeah.
Like, great. It's good because, we only have our own experiences at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's like, I love learning from other people and other people's experiences. So I do really appreciate the way that you share your information, because it isn't showing what is correct, but allowing the listener to make their own decision.
I just want to have more nuanced conversations.
I know.
That's what I really want.
Love a bit of nuance. Oh my God, like Hannah Ferguson nuance? I feel like I can't use that word anymore after I saw it real 27 million times.
Yeah. Like this is the problem though, when people hijack words and they don't really know what they mean. We've had a lot of words that have been totally taken. Like even the word woman, like people can't even describe what a woman is anymore. So, I think that's part of the strategy, is when you confuse people so much by putting so many layers of like truth, like quote unquote truth on top of it. And this whole concept of like my truth is like your experience. Yes, but there is only one truth. Your experience of that truth is different and varied and valid, but that doesn't mean that it's different from the truth, in my opinion.
No, I think that's a valid opinion. I am going to affirm. I will affirm that opinion.
I'll check you later about it.
Yeah, cool. So remember that thing I said on the podcast one time? Well, let me check you on that. Back on the road to wisdom. I don't know if we reached out to you or if Jalal connected us directly, but we were speaking with Jalal and Cole, and they were like, you need to speak with Lauren. And I'm like, great, let's do that. And then I felt pregnant. Both Chloe and I felt pregnant, and our brains turned to absolute mush. And I don't know what happened, but I think we got in contact and then just it got lost.
Yes.
And originally, because we were pregnant, we were going to talk about birth, because you had written a book, Birthing Outside the System. And for anyone that has been following for a long time can understand that would be a subject or a title that would tweak our interest. Now, I have flicked through that book, and I figure we can start there, because birthing outside the system is a hot topic at the moment.
It is.
I don't know if you've been following along, but it can be quite controversial.
I'm a controversial kind of gal. Like, if you've got a controversial topic, I'll cover it. That's my jam.
Well, you had your son 7 years ago, and planned to birth entirely out of the system. Do you want us to take us through that experience?
Yeah, look, I speak about it a little bit in the book, and for those who come from my channel, probably might not know this kind of stuff, because I don't really talk about any of that stuff online. Nobody really knows much about my private life, but I will share a little bit about my birth story. I basically just was trying to free birth with a friend of mine as a support person, and my son was face presentation, so he got a little bit stuck, and so we transferred to hospital, at which point that nothing was really done. I had a few internal examinations just to see what was actually going on, why I was in active labor for 7 hours. Like, what is happening here? Why is there no breaks? I'd been told there was going to be breaks, guys. I was really like, hey, you said it was going to be hard, but you said that I would get to rest. That hasn't happened for me. Why? What is happening? So we kind of figured out, that he was face presentation. My waters were actually coming through my cervix, and so my body was interpreting that as a head in the canal, and so my body started pushing, but there was nothing in there to push out, so got a little bit confused. So and eventually he just tucked his head under and he came out all on his own, and it was all wonderful. And then I checked myself out of hospital and had horrific experiences with the OB there, who I'm still like, I wish I had have reported her, but
Mm.
you're postpartum at the time, and this is why I think it's so important to have really good support people or your partner there who is like the defender of you in that time period, because she was horrific and told me that I was going to die and my baby was going to die, and that I was, an irresponsible mother for going home and all of these things, and just not a nice person. But this was all part of the experience. So yeah, and afterwards I wrote that book. But part of me connecting with you guys through Jalal and Cole, I knew Cole for a very long time beforehand through his breathing stuff, and he'd been working with kids. And I knew Jalal, he moved to the country a few years after I'd given birth, and we connected. And I had been talking to Cole recently about my son's palate because he had trouble breastfeeding. And I was like, Cole knows all about this kind of stuff. So we'd had a call, and I was like, what's going on? He's got this really strong tongue tie. He had like a 95% of the face tongue tie. It was really, really, really up front. And I decided to have it cut. And all of that conversation. And then I talked to the two of them and connected them together. And at the time I had a different podcast called The Connector, which was basically was people, because that's what I do. I connect people with other people. It's really like a gift of mine. And like that was kind of how it played out in real life with Cole and Jalal. It's like, you two need to chat. And then they kind of didn't really chat, much like you and I had reached out, but nothing really happened. And then I jumped in and I was like, no, really, you need to chat, and kind of force them to have this conversation. And then they have their beautiful quantum kid business that came out of that great partnership. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with this story, but it's it's all come around in the end.
No, you've totally connected some dots for me, because I mean, with my child making days, like there's a lot of holes in my brain, and I now actually remember in that interview we were speaking about you. You're the person we were speaking about in the interview. Oh my gosh, there we go.
It was me. Yeah, they really weren't going to talk to each other, and I forced them with my my feminine wiles. I have strong personality, some would say. And no, I just know, I just can see potential in people. I really believe in when I back you, I back you 100%. And I know what you're capable of, and I am like your biggest support. And so I met the two of them. I was like, these two people, they're absolutely wonderful, great men. And I know that they have the same values and they want the same things and they can work together really well. I know that their personalities would be quite compatible. And I could hear from both of them that they weren't getting enough of like what they needed out of their careers. And just have a conversation. Like, I feel like you'll spark some stuff. So I like that role that I tend to play out in society, like connecting people. And I know a lot of people and I know a lot of things, and I'm good at it, but unfortunately can't really make a career out of it. I mean, unless you're like a matchmaker, I guess.
Maybe like a business matchmaker.
I could be. DM me your business woes, people, and I'll see what I do.
Who I can hook you up with.
That's it.
That's awesome. So before we move past your birth story, can you share how you came to the decision to free birth?
Yeah, I can. I couldn't afford a midwife.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically it. I didn't go into this thinking I want a free birth. I had the idea that free birthing would be great, maybe for like a second or a third child.
And just really quickly, like free birthing 7 years ago was not like, it wasn't a big.
It was so taboo.
I don't even know if Free Birth Society was around yet, or maybe they just, like Emily had just started it. But yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it definitely wasn't like the trendy thing to do. So not on social media and all of what we see now. So yeah, what brought you to the decision? Oh well, not.
I just simply couldn't afford a midwife, and they just changed the rules the year before. Mm-hmm. So you could have one midwife the year before, but the year that I gave birth, it was like now you have to have two midwives, so you have to pay two people. and I just couldn't afford it. So I knew I absolutely did not want to give birth in the conventional way. I did not want to go to hospital. I did not want to do any of the mainstream interventions. I wanted to listen to my body, and like I knew that birth was not a medical process, that's something that needed that attention. But I really wanted my first one to be supported by women, and I had this idea in my head that it was going to be like a women's circle moment where like all the women in my life would be there, and it would be this wonderful like moment. And I would have these supportive elders and midwives and these women who'd been through this and would walk me through this initiation. And I wasn't able to cultivate that at the time. So my next best thing was to free birth with my friend who as a support person. And yeah, it was scary because, like you said, it was really not a thing at all. It was very taboo back then, and people thought I was absolutely nuts. Like, what, you're just going to have it at home? Yeah, I am.
I'm going to have it
But
at home. I'm going to birth
100%.
my child in the comfort of my home. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I had really amazing midwives at the hospital. So I went into the MGP program, and I was quite lucky to get into that. And they knew everything. And even though they were hospital midwives, they were absolutely incredible. They knew that the date of birth that was on my sheets on my file was incorrect. And so they were like, don't change it. It's going to give you more lead time, and we don't have to then follow these rules. They were very supportive of like, okay, you just stay at home until you need to come. They knew what my plan was. I was very open with them. I'm like, I'm not vaccinating. I'm not having any interventions. Nobody touch me. If I come here, and if I do have a cesarean, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want, like seeding, all of this kind of stuff. So they knew I was a person who knew what they wanted, and I'd given everyone birth plans and was very like, this is the rules, But they were so great. And unfortunately, like I texted my midwife when my waters broke, and she said, oh no, you've texted me. Now I have to tell you to go to hospital. Like, well, if you hadn't have told me, then I wouldn't have been legally obligated to say go to hospital. But here we are. So yeah, it was not a decision that I really felt like I had much of a choice in. I was like, I either go the mainstream route or I try and do this by myself. And in the end, I got to do both. And I got to have good and bad experiences of both. Had I had an experienced midwife with me at home, someone who'd seen hundreds of births before, I can imagine, I don't know, but I can imagine she would have looked at my situation and gone, let's just lift your belly a little bit so your son can tuck his head under. And then I would have probably given birth a lot quicker, a lot easier, and definitely would have had less complications. But, that wasn't the case. And, I don't feel like I had a traumatic birth in many sense, but I do feel like there was trauma in my birth, if that makes sense. Like, it was quite confronting to be in active labor for 7 hours. And it was, the experiences that I had with the OB at the hospital was pretty brutal. So, swings and roundabouts, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I find back then, obviously a different situation. 7 years ago is a different situation, but we still see it today where women who have intentions to not even just not free birth, but just to home birth and need to transfer and get berated in a hospital, and then they get without realizing you're actually just pushing more people away from your institution, the one that you want everyone to birth in, because you're berating them when they need help. And it's fascinating to see that play out still. Although
when I went into hospital the first time, sorry.
No, go for it.
When I went into hospital the first time, when my midwife, I said, oh, my water's broke. She said, you got to go into hospital. And the nurse was like, we're full. And I was like, great. So I'm going to go home then. And she was like, you don't even seem like you're really in labor anyway. You seem to be handling this very well. I'm actually not convinced that you're in labor. I nearly like sidekicked this woman in the face. I was like, are you kidding? Like, I've done calm birth courses. I'm like doing all my best right now. I'm in pain. My water's broken. You can see that I'm leaking everywhere, but it wasn't enough leaking for her. And I wasn't in enough pain for her. I was handling it too well. So she was quite happy to send me home, and I was quite happy to be sent home. But that was really for me. I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back here. These people are not supportive. I did not want to give birth with someone like that in the room. And luckily it was many hours later, so she wasn't on shift when I came back. But you're absolutely right. They push people away with their attitude. And like, I did the right thing. I went into hospital. I did what I was told, and I still got berated. Like, it was just disgusting behavior from a woman. Instead of being like, wow, you're doing really well. I can see that, you've gone into labor and you've got some contractions and you're breathing really well. You're doing a great job. Keep going. You've got this. She was like, don't really believe you. Like, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. The baby's coming.
There's two ways that could have gone down. Like you said, like, oh, wow, you're doing really well. But I think that being at home right now would benefit you is like a different way of, like, if you need to get someone out of the hospital and back home, like, rather than like on, nah, you're not. Sorry, You're not. I don't believe you. Like, it's all right. It's okay. This is why we're here. We're here to educate people.
Yeah, that's it. Hopefully we need to educate. I feel like we need to educate the hospital staff. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, and look, I feel like that's going in two ways too. Like, I do know people who work in hospitals, and like I know midwives, and I've heard of good experiences. And I'm like, while my experiences within hospital, I've had some really epic flops. I've also experienced people who are there who genuinely want to help and who do want further education and want to see women succeed in their natural births if that's what they wish to do. So they're there. You just need more of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on that, what made you start asking questions about vaccines?
The vaccine story. Vaccines for me, I was pretty pro-vaccine. I went and got the HPV when I was in high school when it came out. My mom was like, I don't think you should get that. And I was pretty determined to get it. I was like, no, it's going to stop me having cervical cancer. Like, why wouldn't I get it? That makes sense to me. And ended up with my first pap smear having like SIN1. For those who don't know, it's like pre-cancerous cells. And they basically say SIN1 will either develop SIN2s and 3s and 4 cancer, or your body and immune system will kick in and the SIN1 will disappear. So they recommend that you get another pap smear every 6 months. So every 6 months, I had a pap smear and it kept coming back SIN1. And then every 3 months, SIN1. And then they were like, okay, like, we don't know what's going on here. Your body should be either getting rid of this or should be progressing into cancer. But your body is just signaling that it has precancerous cells. And then, I'd go to a new doctor, be like, maybe these guys don't know what I'm talking about. And they would be like, oh, you should get the HPV vaccine because you've got these SIN1. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is from the vaccine. But anyways, but that was, something that had happened early on, just before, I think, when I started to question vaccines. And the story that comes into that plays into that, is that I had a family member growing up that had bipolar disorder. And that family member was in and out of mental institutions for most of my life. They were on every medication known to man. They had multiple diagnoses: ADD, ADHD, OCD, AAD, anti-authority disorder, and bipolar. They were seeing every psychiatrist, psychologist under the sun, medicated for all these different things, and nothing was working. And was basically like, they will never have a job, never be able to live without care. They will never be able to, have a normal life. This is going to be their lot in life. And basically, another family member was like, I'm not going to accept that. I've followed all the rules and it's gotten us nowhere. And they started researching and they found that There was a company called True Hope Nutritionals in Holland, and we had to get some stuff sent from Holland to New Zealand and then from New Zealand to Australia because we couldn't actually import it directly. But it was megadose vitamin therapy. And a year and a half detoxing off all of the pharmaceuticals on this megadose vitamin therapy, and then a year and a half just on those nutritionals. And this family member has never had another episode again. Is completely cured, was told they were incurable, probably one of like the worst cases they've ever seen, like all these dramatic things that people say. And they still are to this day completely cured. Never had another episode. So whether they really had it or whether they didn't have it, like these are all things that come out now or maybe it was the medication or whatever it may have been. But that kick-started for my entire immediate family a shift into natural health and a shift into looking at things. And so when I watched Food Matters, that was based off like my mom had called me and said, you need to watch this documentary. And so I started watching it, and then I started researching, and then I wanted to study, integrative nutrition. And through all of that and finding people like David Wolf and all these other people and like the High Wire, like Del Bigtree, all that kind of stuff. That whole arena of health and wellness opened up to me, and vaccines was one of the things that I started looking at and questioning, and then was able to look back on my own story and be like, oh, if I just had read the insert for the HPV, you would find that it actually causes the thing that it says that it prevents. It's, in the insert. And I think the lawsuit was going on at the time where they had all these women and men that was suing for damages from the HPV vaccine in the States. It's actually one of the most dangerous vaccines out there, just so parents know.
That was before COVID.
Before COVID. It's got one of the highest injury rates that they've ever seen. And I was like, oh, wow. So that's what happened to me. And then I look back on my childhood as a chronic asthmatic, and that started at 18 months, my 18 months inoculations. Oh, okay. Now we know that asthma can actually be triggered by vaccines as well. And then I looked into my genetics. I was like, oh, I have MTHFR, which means that I detox at only 25% of a normal person who does not have this genetic mutation. So any kind of heavy metals or toxins or chemicals that I eat, breathe, put on my skin, wear, live in, all of that gets stored in my body at a 75% rate more than a normal person. I can't move it out of my system. So my system is overloaded right now. Oh, okay. So maybe when I'm getting vaccinated and Joe Blow down the street is getting vaccinated at the same time, at the same day, maybe from the same doctor with the same batch, why am I having reactions and he's not having reactions? That would be why, because my system is not the same and it cannot take it. And so that was a big, deep dive for me. And I just really felt like I didn't have kids at this point, but I was working with like the mothers groups who were non-vaccine mums groups. I was a part of those groups before I even got pregnant, before I even had a kid. I was like, I want to join. You guys are great. They're on the front line, but it was all women. It was all women on the front line. There was never any men there speaking up. It was crazy. It was just all mothers. This is pre-2020. No one was listening to us. No one, like we were like a cheap little tweet in the ocean, like a bird flying over the vast ocean. Like no one could hear us. No one really paid attention to us. And then 2020 happened, and it was like, you're on. We know we've been preparing for this. We are front and center. We've got all the research. We've already done all the information. We've been waiting for this. We've been saying that this was going to come, and here it is. Like we were like warriors who'd been prepared for war, and like this was our battle. We were going into it. We're like, okay. So then you've got all the people who came out during 2020 who kind of jumped on the bandwagon, I guess. And then you've got some extremists in that realm that are still really going hard in there. Then you've got some people who have just like woken up and been a little bit more reasonable. But you still had in 2020, people who were just anti-COVID and still wanted to vaccinate the childhood vaccines. But I think that's conversation, especially with RFK in the White House, that conversation is slowly turning and changing, especially with social media as well coming out, where I'm able to share snippets from Stanley Plotkin's 6-hour deposition, where he talks about all the fetuses that he uses to cut up and their lungs and their tongues and all these disgusting things that he uses to experiment on, how he used foster children and Black communities and all of these people to experiment on. And he did that with no remorse and just said, well, that's what we did. And I'm able to share that, and people are able to be like, oh, you're not lying. You're not a crazy person. I'm able to share data from their very own studies. And that's what I did during 2020 is I shared that data, and I got incredibly shadow banned for it. I had nothing was my opinion. Everything was data based, and I was breaking down that data and translating it into layman terms for everybody online. And they took away followers off my account. You couldn't search for me online. They, if you tried to tag me, it said this person shares dangerous misinformation. If you tried to follow me, it would say you don't want to follow this person. They're a dangerous misinformation person. I had like 7,000 followers, and they just capped me. They just kept taking 100 away each day, and I would get 100 more, and I just couldn't progress. And then they just shut down my views. So 7,000 people and 30 views. And it was just all I had. Like I had funny reels where I just made fun and used the algorithm for like all of the lip syncing things that people were doing. And I just changed it into vaccine information just to kind of get around the algorithm using their own tactics. Made them funny, I had to laugh a little bit. But actually all I had in my highlights and my stories was just plain data and information that I was translating for people, because not everyone can read that, but I'd been doing years of research already, so I knew how to do that. It was just a topic that I felt very passionately about, and I feel angry that people are being deliberately hoodwinked. Like that makes me angry. I don't want that for people. I don't mind what your choice is, but I want you to make that choice from a really informed place. And so for me, like, it's not about convincing anyone to do anything. I just want to have them have the information, because then I feel like that's fair. Then we can have true discourse. We can have true consent. We can have true discussions. We can have real life data then we can work off, because people are not being brainwashed and propagandized and lied to and, killed making medical decisions. It's really upsets me.
Yeah, I think that I didn't find Del Bigtree and the High Wire until I think it was the end of 2019, and
good time to find them.
Yeah, I know, right? It's literally just before everything hit, and I was just
Perfect.
I was following a case. Maybe it was the HPV.
The Samoa stuff?
Pardon?
Was it the Samoa stuff?
I can't remember. They were reporting on a massive case on, I think it was HPV. I can't remember, but it was it was huge, and I was following along with that because I too was injured by the HPV vaccine. I know. I feel like probably more women than we give credit for.
Yes.
Can probably link some of their issues to that old jabby jab. But that was like a massive eye opener. And I was just like, how is all of this information here? Like it's right here. And yet everyone I know is fully vaccinating. They're just still in that like conveyor belt mindset of must, like this is the only way I can have my children and do the right thing and all. And I'm like, but there's so much information right here. Like it's here. And like, yeah, I think Vaxxed was like my first kind of foot in the door for that. And then even, I saw an interview that went wild, and I don't know what they were thinking, because surely when Robert De Niro jumps on and it's like, I'm not allowed to show this, like we've had to cancel this one out, but can I tell you, you need to watch that, and you need to watch In Trace Amounts, because like I have an autistic son, and like this is, and we really believe, like me and my wife really believe that it was caused from these vaccines. Like they put that everywhere, like, oh, Robert De Niro is being cancelled. Like surely everyone isn't like, oh my God, I need to watch that. Like what is he talking about? I need to watch that. I was one of those people. I was like, yes. And yeah, so anyway, that was kind of my introduction into I can't remember where I was going with that, but I too got really like fired up about it, because I'm like, there is so much information. Why isn't everyone doing this research before I don't know. And like before I even had any information on vaccines, like my very first thing was when I was pregnant and I got that Hep B, like, you know, they gave you the pamphlet for Hep B and I'm like,
Yeah.
like I'm making this perfect little human. I have avoided like every medication under the sun during this pregnancy. Like I used to take Panadol all the time. And while I was pregnant, I was like, no, I'm not taking anything but like healthy food.
Aren't you glad for that now?
I know. Intuition, mate.
Yeah. Like you won't eat sushi while you're pregnant, but you'll inject some vaccines. That makes sense.
I did eat sushi though.
I eat sushi too.
What are we doing?
I don't have any problems with it.
No. And I also ate runny eggs. Anyway,
and soft cheese. I did all the soft cheese.
I don't know if I think I went off cheese, to be honest, but I probably would have just to, you know,
stick it
Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah. You're already right-wing,
Jesus, I know. But yeah, and I was just like, wait, what? Why are we injecting my perfect little child that's coming out as the image of perfection with a vaccine? Like, I don't want to give my kid an injection straight off the bat. So that was my like big. See, I was vaccine injured before that, and that didn't even like. That's how I was. Didn't.
Yeah, it's like, the same.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, whatever. And then they're like, we're going to inject your baby. I was like, hold the boat. Let me do a little research, you know.
That's like correct hormones and good mothering instinct right there. Like that is the correct response. That when you're healthy and you're a healthy feminine, like that is the correct response, that you should arc up, that you should want to protect your baby, that you're not suppressing and repressing that part of you that wants to express, because that's totally biological and normal and instinctual for you to be like, don't bring a needle near my child. So I think that's really healthy and really like it's a good sign.
Yeah, but now I'm a right-wing bigot, so
yeah,
you know, how good is it?
It's the pipeline.
First you're questioning vaccines.
So from sushi to right wing, like you know, you couldn't help it.
Right wing bigot, like
this is it. You know, sushi causes racism. That's how it works. Okay. Yeah, you had no choice. You ate the sushi while you're pregnant. What did you expect?
What indeed? So no, I definitely gel with that. I'm actually surprised at how long it's taken us to connect, considering the number
of me too.
little idiosyncrasies here. All right, so propaganda. I feel like you have a good insight into this since you worked in media. Is it media or like it was like movie production or?
Well, I worked for Warner Brothers Home Entertainment.
Okay.
Shout out to those guys. I don't think that division even exists anymore because, you know, DVDs and movies, do we still do them? I don't even know. But yeah, I worked for that home entertainment, so TV shows and movies. Before that, I'd studied music industry business and I was kind of running around in the Sydney music scene a fair bit and had lots of friends working for lots of bands. So kind of had this crossover between movies, TV and music as well. So yeah, I was across it all, but I was in PR, so public relations, publicity and promotions. So my job was basically to convince you to go and see or buy this movie without you realizing that you were being advertised to. That was my job. So I feel like I'm well versed in knowing how to manipulate and convince people, and knowing the mechanisms behind that and how that all works. So yeah, that was my past life, and I really loved it. To be honest with you, I like working with people, so I enjoyed taking people around and doing interviews, and we're doing stuff like this, but on radio or TV, or we'd be doing a phone call for a print magazine with some kind of celebrity in LA. It was a fun time. I really enjoyed it, and just ended up becoming one of those right-wing racist bigots and couldn't shut my mouth at work. So, I had to leave and I had to leave and go work in an organic food shop instead. I couldn't help myself.
I think that it's a really cool skill set to have, especially coming into COVID, because I would imagine that you'd be able to pick out pretty instantaneously where the propaganda is hitting us. Like, I mean, us mere mortals over here really had to like something in my tummy doesn't feel right about that. Like, I have to stand 1.5 meters away from my loved ones. Like, something in my belly is telling me that's wrong. But I feel like maybe you had a better insight into what was going on there, having like knowing the language that is used and how to subliminally promote certain things.
Yeah.
Can you share a bit
It was
more on that?
it was something that I'd kind of flexed my muscle a bit with the year before where we'd had the fires. And a lot of the stuff that was coming out around that, I was kind of, I guess I flexed that propaganda muscle in the form of debunking. So I would kind of look at both sides, whether it was mainstream media or it was like the mad conspiracy theorists online, and we'd be like, "You're both wrong." And one of the things that I really want people to understand with propaganda is that it's really easy to go into hardcore conspiracy theories. And conspiracy theories had been like my hobby for maybe 10 to 15 years before that. I'd just really been interested in them as a hobby. Like I really wanted to know what all of them were, what their proof was. I didn't believe all of them, but just had an interest in it. I used to like buy Nexus magazine and read it all. And, it was my thing. But it's very easy to go full blown conspiracy when you realize that the government is lying to you, and you realize that the media is complicit in that lie, and you realize that there's lobbyists and propaganda machines behind all of that because it makes people money and they have shareholders to answer to. So it becomes really easy for you to, well, not you, but like for people to take that feeling of betrayal and flip it around and make it mean so much more than it does. One of the things that I see the most is people talking about how everybody is, in on it, whether that is some kind of agenda, like Illuminati type elitist agenda, or whether it is like everybody is an alien or a reptile, or
reptile
everybody
people.
is trans, like every female celebrity is a trans man,
The first ladies,
whatever.
I think we're nailing the first ladies for trends at the moment.
Yeah, it's so easy to go down that road, and I have very close friends who've gone down that road. But I think what people need to understand, and you see this now when we devour ourselves, and the left does this really well, where they eat themselves, but the right also does this with the cancel culture. And you see this with Charlie Kirk, when people didn't have the right responses, people will come after other people, or like what's happening with Candace Owens right now, where they were like, yeah, Candace Owens, and they're like, hey, no, actually bad Candace Owens, People will are so quick to immediately demonize you when you don't fit their agenda, their own personal bias. So something that I think people really need to realize is that not everyone is in on it. Actually, what is the most likely scenario is never put conspiracy where ignorance can flourish. So for me, most likely, and the most likely scenario is that most people are dumb and going along with things because they've been told to, and they don't think about it, rather than them being some crazy mastermind behind like some massive agenda that everybody knows is what they're doing, and they're playing it out. And I know that's true because on the other side, even the people who are in the conspiracy side are in some senses quite dumb and going along with things and playing things out because they think it's the right thing to do, not because they've actually backed anything up or done any kind of research. They're just emotionally driven by what they've heard. And you would see this online when they would interview people and be like, why are you not getting the vaccine? And they'd be like, oh, they're putting snake venom in it, It would just be like, these people, well, they didn't know why. Yeah, microchip, everyone's going to be microchipped, like all of this stuff. All the, like, I don't know, but it it's Trump's vaccine or whatever it was. They didn't have any good valid. I was like, someone interview me. I've got like data. I've got actual points. I can tell you why, but these people just don't know why. Even if you don't know why, it would have been better to say, look, I don't have any information behind why I'm choosing not to vaccinate, but I feel in my body that it's not the right thing for me to do at this time for my personal experience. And I'm choosing to listen to my intuition. I'm choosing to listen to myself rather than go along with what I've been told. And perhaps I will do more research down the line to see what effects that could have. But for now, I'm just choosing to trust myself on this. That would have been a better response, if you don't have any data, because not everyone does, than to spout off like 400 different conspiracy theories. So I feel like propaganda, it's interesting because we always think about it like in the terms of like massive media corporations, massive elitist groups, or like secret societies that are behind all of these things that we are living in right now, this mainstream soup of life. And we kind of are like, this is what we experience day to day, is like constant propaganda. But propaganda also comes from within. It comes from our internal bias. It comes from the people we surround ourselves with, the people we listen to online, the stuff that we consume without fact checking, without researching, without going, okay, that's an interesting point. Where did you get that information from? Who did you hear that? Where did they get it from? Let me actually read the data. Let me read the study. Now let me see who funded the study. How did the study come about? What institution is that connected to? Who decides on the funding for that? Where does that funding then come from? What government is supporting that? Like it goes back and it goes back and it goes back. And understanding that there's so much that plays out just due to human emotions. What happens with propaganda is the easiest way to propagandize someone is to get them emotional, is to tug on their emotions and to make them feel some kind of trauma bond to your cause. Like, look at Greta Thunberg. She's like the greatest at this. How dare you? You're like, oh, being yelled at by a little kid who's like got a crack in her voice and she's going to cry. And it's so effective. Like emotion is the bit, like any movie trailer that you see, watch it on mute without the music that makes you feel something, has way less effect. You have any scary film, put it on mute, not as scary. Like we are such emotive people and we're moved by music and sound, and it moves our emotions so much, and we're so easily manipulated by it. We hear a certain sound and we're like, oh, I associate that with happiness. I associate that with scariness. I associate that with like, this information that I'm hearing right now is not true because they put clown music in the background. It could be straight up facts, but someone's put clown music and you're like, I'm not going to take that seriously. We're so easily manipulated through subliminal messaging, through sound, that we don't even realize it. It's not even visual. It's actually like more audio than anything else. It's crazy.
Yeah, all I could think of right there was like grandma killer. like you're gonna kill grandma. Are you trying to kill grandma? Like that was like the whole playbook was very emotive. It was like really emotive. Yeah. If you don't get vaccinated, you're gonna kill your grandma. If you leave your house, you're gonna kill grandmas everywhere.
What about the immune compromised? What about the immune compromised people who cannot get vaccines, who don't have access to vaccines? Are you going to be that selfish that you would put in danger little newborn babies who have just been born and are not able to be vaccinated yet? Or like someone who has some kind of terrible autoimmune disease or cancer and can't be vaccinated? Or grandma who's like so on her deathbed that she would probably die from a sneeze. You're going to put her in danger? How selfish of you. How dare you?
Greta,
you are a despicable human and you should feel shame. Mm-hmm. You should feel isolation from society. You should feel berated like a little child, and you should be punished. And now I feel justified in punishing you in whichever way I think is fitting. And I will feel no shame about my behavior because you, quote unquote, deserve it. Mm-hmm. This is like the way that we get others
in the neck.
Yep, with rubber bullets in Melbourne, maybe. Like when we shot all of the protesters and we were like, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Like, these people were peacefully protesting and they opened fire with rubber bullets at close range in Melbourne.
I
Like,
forgot about that. That was really scary.
it's insane.
Yeah.
People forget that we were told
Mm.
you are not going to leave your house ever. You will never be a part of society again. You'll never be able to leave this country. You will not have any of the privileges that you get once you are vaccinated. You will not have any of that. You will not be able to see your family. You will not be able to, go grocery shopping. You will not be able to do
gone.
anything. No, this is it. This is your life. If you choose this, you're done. People forget that's how bad it was. People are like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It was a bit of a lockdown. Not that bad.
Well, we were here where we were. It wasn't that bad because people are a little bit more hesitant to believe the government at their word, and yeah, it was loose. It was a bit loose up here, but in the cities, I mean, were you in Sydney at that stage?
No, I'm so lucky I was in the country and I did whatever the hell I wanted to do. I didn't follow a single rule. I never wore a mask. I drove wherever I wanted to drive. I saw whoever I wanted to see. I went to every practitioner that I needed to see.
So it's like here.
Not single, yeah.
Good.
And, I did not comply at all. I got yelled at quite a few times and I was very much like, well, you want to come at me? Let's go. I'll put on those metaphorical boxing gloves. I was like, let's go, old man in the street. But in the cities, yeah, it was scary. It was dangerous.
Yeah, no, it was a terrifying time. But
it's public shaming too. Like, it's group think mentality, and remember dob on your neighbor? Like, everyone was like calling people because someone had a party next door, like someone went to visit their grandma and they're like, you can't be in there. There's more than 13 people or whatever the rule was,
Yeah. Yep.
And people would call the police. You're calling the police. Someone visiting their grandma. It's just nuts.
But and that was marketed as doing the right thing.
100%. That's all propaganda. That's people being brainwashed. So it's hard to be upset with them in some ways because you're like, it's kind of not their fault because their brain has been taken over. I can be angry that they let their brain be taken over, but in the end, that's like they're not consciously thinking that through. If you sat down and had a conversation with that person, they'd probably be really lovely to you.
Yeah.
And this is what Charlie Kirk used to do, He was like, let's just have a conversation because probably got more in common than we do apart.
Yeah.
But when you put fear into someone, they don't want to have a conversation with you. They want to other themselves and they want to divide. And that's how we end up easily taking over someone's brain, making them feel fear, making them feel any emotion that separates them, panic, sadness. It's all part of the brainwashing, and their brains are literally not braining. They've been taken over by that reptilian mindset that just runs on autopilot for them.
I know, and we're trying to give these people agency.
Yeah.
And I wonder what because something that I've been dabbling with a little bit is agency and like the population at scale. I mean, the people who are starting podcasts and having these conversations and wanting to educate or wanting to learn more have an amount of personal agency, but can we give the whole population that agency on mass? Does anyone even want it? I mean, it's
a good question.
Like it would be very different. I think like the world would look very, very different if everyone was like, oh no, I want personal agency and I'm going to make decisions according to my beliefs and morals and values and be considerate of my community as I do that. I just don't think that that's in the cards for...
The thing, most people don't know what their morals, goals and values are. Most people have no idea. They're not connected with that inside of themselves. So it would be impossible for a lot of people to make decisions based off that. And then we've got to think about, for the last several generations, we've broken familial bonds. So we're actually only bonded with society and our peers. And so and society being mainly authority figures. So our underlying psychology is not going to allow us, unless we break those bonds that are made there, our psychology is not going to allow us to tap into, hey, what do I really want here? What do I really feel like? What are my values and how can I live that out? It's just not going to happen. And this is where you get the term NPCs, because so many people are like, I don't want to make a fuss. I just want to go along. Can't we all just get along? I don't like confrontation. It's a lot of avoidance going on. A lot of people are avoidance, or they're anxious and they panic. Oh, I don't want to upset anybody. Let's all just come together and like everybody be happy. There's a lot of these relational aspects that play out in terms of like larger society dynamics, when really it's just this interpersonal relational play that someone cultivated in their childhood from their attachment styles from their parents or their primary relationships that they saw, and then they just play that out at larger social dynamics. They can't get past that. That's like their immediate programming that they're just coming up against every single time they want to take a step left. Oh, too bad, I'm being pulled right. It's just it's so hard unless you work on it, but people don't want to work on it because it means that you have to open Pandora's box. If you want to do self-work, that is like, if I have to acknowledge that I was lied to about vaccines, if I have to acknowledge that my government lies to me, if I have to acknowledge that I was easily brainwashed by media, if I have to do that, then I have to now look at everything. I have to open up and be like, what else was I lied to about? What else am I giving over my agency towards? And that's too much for a lot of people. Like, I actually can't look at all of that. It's too overwhelming. So they just don't. They don't even start because they know that they're going to have to unpack all of that. And we don't have the support for that. We don't have the resources for that. We've never been able to do that before. So let's just shut it up and just keep getting on with life. Let's just suppress that and push that down because it's just too much. It's too much for most people.
And like I get the comfort and like the abdication of responsibility. Like there's so much comfort in that. Like if I don't have to be responsible for every single little thing, and I mean that happens in birth and it happens in parenting. I feel like a lot of like parents aren't parents anymore. Like I don't know. There was a day where my parents felt like fucking parents. They did their parenting. Like they kept their bullshit out of me and my siblings' lives, and they like dealt with their bullshit. And every now and then they'd have a spat in front of us, sure, and then they would repair it in front of us. But like a lot of like the hard stuff that they were dealing with, whether that was like financial, emotional, relation, like whatever, that was not brought into my realm. It was like we deal with that because we're the adults.
Yeah.
And now it's like there's this muddy water where we're like bringing our kids into everything, or like everyone, or like we don't want to deal with that by ourselves because that would require a level of responsibility that is just not available. It's available. We just don't want to. I don't know. There's something. There's a block.
We've got a whole generation of people who don't want to take responsibility.
Yeah,
responsibility is the biggest key in this. Absolutely.
Yeah, and
self-responsibility.
I think that's why it's kind of nice to have hospital medical staff to tell you how to do your birth and a government to tell you how to do life, and they're paying for stuff for you too, which is lovely because then you don't have to get a job, which is a responsible thing to do, and pay your own mortgage and stuff. So it's like I don't know. There's this coddling.
Yeah, it plays out on both sides too, though, because like those people who are really happy for medical staff or the media or whatever experts to tell them what to do are also the same people that when they come over to this side, they just wait for some talking head on the internet like me or someone else to tell them what to do.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there.
And they just kind of go, well, now I'll just listen to you instead of somebody else. And, it'll be like some crazy person said this. So that's what I'm going to parrot and what I believe. They haven't actually done the critical thinking and the deprogramming like they think they have. They've just taken that same behavior and just transferred it to the other side. So it is just it is a personality type, that abdication of responsibility. It's quite scary to take responsibility for everything. And I feel like it's we've set up our entire world to cop out, whether that's through religious structures or societal structures or authority figures, to totally be like, well, no, it's not my fault because this other thing actually happened. And that's so, I'm not responsible for that. So
Mm.
yeah, like imagine if you were like, oh, I'm wholly responsible for all of my life and all of the decisions that I've ever
And
made
all my
and every,
reactions and all my
yeah,
behaviors and all my
yep,
decisions and
all of it.
Mhm,
All of
mhm.
it. And, I have to, the position that I'm in right now in life, financially, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, physically, like everything, I am fully responsible for because every decision I've ever made has led me here, including the decisions that I made to abdicate responsibility. Imagine if you had to do that. Like it's confronting for a lot of people. Like, oh,
Mm, mhm.
damn, I have to actually participate in life. I have to actually like that's the difference between the really successful people, like the millionaires and the billionaires, is they were like, mate, no one's taking responsibility. Imagine if I just took responsibility. It's not even that hard. I
Mm.
would be 10 times ahead of everybody else,
Yeah, yeah.
Success is so easy when you just realize that game. You're like, oh, I just have to work like this much harder than everyone else and easy, done.
Oh, mate, I know. It's yeah,
It's crazy.
it is crazy. But there is I remember the feeling of not feeling like I had that safety net anymore. Like it's like there's this safety net there. And then as soon as you're like, oh, no, wait, I'm responsible for all of this, it's like someone just cut that away. And you're like, oh, shit, like I better make sure that I'm standing on this tightrope really well.
Yeah.
um, so, no, look, I get it at the same time. Let's all take a little more responsibility and we could do some sweet stuff.
Yeah.
Um, lastly, I really wanted to ask something that is going to completely off the tracks this conversation. You sat with Indigenous elders,
I did.
and that, I mean, don't know if you know, but this podcast is called Return to Wisdom. So I feel like there would be some really interesting information that you may have learned in that time. Not many people do that. I mean, I feel like I know Indigenous people who haven't sat with their elders.
Uh-huh.
So one, how did that come about? And two, what did you take away?
Man, you really like the controversial topics, don't you?
No.
It doesn't seem like it's gonna be controversial, but it is. It really is.
I don't
And kind
even
of
know the difference between controversial and normal anymore because literally everything I talk about and say
I love it.
is like
I'm all for
upping someone's hackles. I don't know. Yeah, we just go there. It's fun.
I like it. Well, you kind of touched on it when you said, Indigenous people who don't even sit with their elders, and, that's kind of how it all came about for me. I met some people who knew some people, and I was really into all Indigenous wisdom, whether that was Native American or trying to find Indigenous European tribes or even African, Asian, Aboriginal, like Australian. I really wanted to know all of their medicines. Being in the health realm that I was in, I was like, what is the Indigenous wisdom around all of their medicines and their practices and also their magic? Because there's a whole element of mystic energetics that play out through that people don't really want to acknowledge. They're kind of like, it's not a real thing. But it is a real thing. But I knew some people who knew some people, and I was introduced to someone who was part of a Warlpiri tribe, so up near Uluru, up that way. And he basically everyone that I met in that circle was basically saying our own kids don't even want to know this stuff. We are going to lose this information. We have no one to pass it down to because nobody wants to know. So if you want to know, technically we don't share with anyone outside. They're pretty private, like they want to keep it in the lineage, which I understand. But there was an element of like, nobody is really coming through in the next generation that really wants to dig into this. So we're kind of happy to share. This is what I was told anyway. We're happy to share with you because we need someone to kind of hold the torch and pass it on down. And I was open to that. I was very much like, yeah, I want any and all information, and just give it to me. I'm happy to hold that. Um, it's it's not often what there's a how do I phrase this? There are many different types of Aboriginal people,
Mhm.
the same way there are many different types of non-Indigenous people. I mean, even saying original Indigenous, like we were born here, so we're Indigenous here. And so you have Aboriginal people who will acknowledge that and say, you're just as Indigenous as me. And then you have people who'll be like, you're not a black fella. You're not part of this mob. You can't be here. And then you have people who are like, we don't believe in any of that anymore. And we're like integrated or we're not integrated. Like there's varying parts of that community, and which is why, like our community, it's hard to get coherence. It's hard to get a collective like yes or no. There's no the tribal people as well is very much like they're individual in their groups. That there's even within that there is hierarchy, but there's still dispute. It's exactly the same as our society. We have left wing, right wing, we have moderates, we have extremists. They have exactly the same, even when it comes to their own culture.
Mhm.
So it is really, really hard to speak to certain people's examples of that, and then other people going, well, that's wrong. That's not right. That's not been my experience. I'm an Indigenous person and this is not what we do. You know what I mean? So
Mhm. Mhm.
it gets really dicey to kind of speak about it. But I was brought in, I was given an Aboriginal name. I was spiritually married off in that sense by that Aboriginal name to someone else, um, because you needed to be attached within the family system so people knew how to treat you. So you were given a certain name and attached to somebody. So I could not legally, but like, legally or properly be given this information. So I was kind of given a whole bunch of knowledge, which I still have, and I've written down a lot, and I did some practices, but I pulled out of that because of the black magic element that came out of it. This is where you might lose some audience here, but
Have we still got you? Have we still got you? No, continue.
yeah, look, some religious people will actually acknowledge that this is a real thing, and this is why they will be like, yeah, demons are real, magic is real. This is why we don't dabble in that, and this is why we come under the protection of God and Jesus and rebuke all of that. So you do have some people who are very open to that, and then you have some people who are like, this is nonsense. Um, I can only tell you my experience, and my experience was that it was very real for me, and I ended up in hospital, and I was actually just reading my hospital records the other night as they're actually right here. I was refiling everything, and I found my hospital records, and they're like, yeah, we did all of these scans, we did all of this blood work, we can't find anything that's wrong with you, but these are the symptoms that she's presenting with, and we can't figure out why. Um, and I had like a curse put on me and then put across all of my timelines, and I had to get that removed. And I literally had a physical experience of that being removed. And it was and the symptoms stopped immediately after I had that removed. So it was pretty black and white for me. Pretty strong, pretty strong experience. And so there's lots of different elements of sitting with Aboriginal elders. Like I have a good friend of mine who's married to, she's one who kind of helped me in the book flesh all that out. And she was like, I really want to pass on my women birthing knowledge to you. And I feel like you're going to help disseminate this information. I think it needs to be talked about. And I was like, great, I'm happy to take all your wisdom and your ancient wisdom and stuff that's been passed down from generation to generation. And I want to put that in the book for consideration. Like maybe we want to get back to those roots. Maybe that's something that we want to foster a little bit more. I would love that. And then I've had, other Aboriginal people that I've sat with who have been like, okay, this tree after this rain will split in this way, and you want to collect this sap, and this is what it does, and here's how you prepare it, and this is how you use it. And I'm like, great, write that down, and then it's like this one over here does this for this reason, and this is what you take from that. So I've had that kind of stuff. And then I've had the people who are like, so this curse.
All right, I'll write it down. Shit.
Yeah. It's like, okay. So yeah, and look, they'll say, no, we don't use that anymore. We don't do that anymore. We don't acknowledge it. We don't use it. It's banned. You know, we definitely don't use it on other people. It's not a thing. It used to be, and it's bullshit. Like from my experience, from my very personal experience, and I got that thrown at me because I was coming into that space, in a space that someone else felt like I was not allowed to be in, and it was actually from another woman. So, you know, women on women hate crime. But yeah, it was, look, it's a really complex and nuanced topic, and it's a really complex, nuanced discussion. And this is why I don't think it is really so much a race thing, because there are people who are going to be of that DNA lineage who have no concept of any of this whatsoever, have been raised far away from that, and who have not much connection to that at all. And they might like do a welcome to country ceremony or an acknowledgement of country ceremony. And then you've got people who are like, we don't need to do that. You were born here. You don't need to be acknowledged to this country. You know, it's so vast, it's so nuanced that it's hard to say this is the correct way to speak about things, or this is the correct version. The only thing that I can say to someone is I can encourage you to go and speak to as many different versions of those people as you can. The same way I would want someone who, like, I'm half Italian, but so I have a little bit of my Italianness, but I can tell you my experience of what it's like to be an Italian, an Australian Italian in particular, an Australian Italian who's gone back to then live in Italy. I can tell you what that experience would be like. And that would be my personal experience, but it's not universal. There are some things that I share with my other Italian friends that were like, oh, yeah, that's so what it's like being Italian. But that's not the same for everybody. And I would say that's the same of like Indigenous wisdom and Indigenous elders, you know, because who's to give someone an elder title? Who's to give someone who has a sense of wisdom? I know old people who are really, really wise, and I know old people who are really, really dumb. Just like young people are dumb and young people are wise. And we put this mysticism on like the Indigenous people, like they should know, or they are somehow more deeper connected to this wisdom or earth than other people. And I just don't think that is the truth. I think that there are some people, yes, absolutely, and they have been taught, and that has been carried on. But I don't think just because your DNA comes from that one, that intrinsically links you to some set of wisdom that you intrinsically, like, that instinctually is in your DNA and that you just know. I think that it needs to be cultivated, and I think that relationship needs to be had before you can go out and claim yourself to be some kind of expert. But yeah, so I don't claim to have any kind of expertise or anything like that. I just know that I've sat with a lot of different people who have a lot of different views and opinions, and they all contradict with each other. And that's so there is no coherent version that anybody can give you, especially not me. It's just people's personal opinions. And I think the more that you look at it that way, the more you're like, I'm going to take a piece from that person. I'm going to take a piece from that person. That's a great piece of wisdom. Going to leave that over there. That's not for me. Maybe I'll leave the black magic for other people because I don't want to be involved in that stuff anymore, you know. Pick what works for you and go from there, because I think that it can be tricky and it can be dangerous. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Not the answer you're expecting.
Oh, no. No, well, I think it actually corroborates. Is that a word?
Yeah.
It corroborates with, I feel like, the information that I have received, because I have friends who are Torres Strait Islander and have lineage to the Indigenous lines of Australia or First Nations. But, you know, when you try to understand more, like, it depends on the mob, and it depends on, and like there's a lot of in-house fighting as well.
Yes.
I mean, and I think nothing brought that out more than when there was the yes vote. Like
The
when,
voice. Yeah.
yeah, like that was huge because I mean, I was like, what do I do? And so I'm asking, I was asking everyone, I'm like, what should I do? What do I do? I don't know.
Yeah.
And because I had Indigenous friends that are like, absolutely do not vote yes. And then I had like Indigenous people who are like, you have to vote yes. And I'm listening to everyone. I'm like, now I'm even less convinced what to do. So there was, I think it's funny that the assumption, I think, of the majority of the population was like, oh yeah, there would be like one way that everything is done for anyone who is First Nations, and it's not it. So no,
hundreds of tribes with all different viewpoints, all different cultures. Like, down south, it was like you can't, if you're a woman, you can't play a didgeridoo, whereas up north it was like women only play didgeridoos. Like we get all these different stories because there is so much diversity. And I think when we don't acknowledge that, when we don't say that they're a diverse people just like everybody else, like when we kind of put them on this pedestal and mystify them like they're some avatar entity, like the movie where it's just like this one group of people who are deeply connected, it's just not the truth. And if you were to say that, you're a racist. And it's like, oh, no, I'm actually deeply invested in all people's wisdom. It's just, I also am very aware of how humanity works and dynamics and location and DNA. And, like I know how culture and society functions. And it's just, it's never as simple as you think it to be. Like nuance for me is the key for everything. We've got to have more nuanced conversations.
Yeah. And this is why podcast format is so brilliant. You get to kind of tease it out. It's never long enough though. I feel like we are coming to the end of our conversation though. And Lauren, if people want to learn more from you, find out more about you, where can they?
No, learn more of my wisdom.
Learn more of your wisdom. Learn more from nuanced conversation.
That's it. So I have an Instagram that I'm fairly active on. And so it's at @a_woman_refined on Instagram. I also have a Substack, A Woman Refined. I'm not writing so much on the Substack at the moment. I am doing another project that I'm writing at the moment, which I'm not going to say too much on, but it's in the works and we'll see what comes out of that later. But I also have a podcast, A Woman Refined podcast, where if you want to hear my 2-hour-long musings and you enjoyed this and you're like, I want to hear more of her talking around in circles, then you're welcome to come over and listen. We have a great time over there. So that's on all streaming platforms and YouTube and Rumble, all of that jazz. I think that's it. I do have my old Instagram is still there. It's that InstaChick _. But I don't use that anymore unless some mad vaccine stuff comes out, in which case I will post over there, and because I have different pages for different things. But that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Or you can DM me. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody.
I will link all of that in the show notes too. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for sharing all your learnings, knowledge, your journey. I hate the word journey now, but like journey. It's like what else do I use? The traveling you have done from hypercritical liberal to misogynistic, racist, bigot. So well done.
Thanks, I appreciate that. That needs to be the opener right now. I'm so glad to be interviewing Lauren, the racist. The anti-vaxxer, granny killer, racist, bigot, anti-Indigenous, like what else? Conspiracy theorist, black magic worshipping.
Bring it. Bring the labels.
Oh, the most chaotic podcast that you've ever listened to.
Trumper.
I don't even like Trump.
No, none of us do. None of us do.
It's so ridiculous.
It's only because RFK ended up over there.
100%.
So,
100%.
and Tulsi.
Just RFK.
It was Tulsi
Yeah.
and RFK.
Yeah.
It was like the Joe Rogan brigade.
Yes.
Yeah, no, anyway, ciao everyone. Thank you. Thank you for
Thanks for
joining
having me.
us.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining me today. If this ignited a flame for you, please share, follow the show, and leave a review. The more support and subscriptions the show gets, the more powerful and credentialed guests I can bring on to deepen these conversations. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next week.